This is a live presentation by Ed Foreman. It's an overview of the basic highlights of the 3-day Successful Life course. Ed and his associates regularly present this unique, life-expanding program to individuals from all walks of life who have a desire to improve their physical, mental, and emotional well-being. Listen now as Jim Wilcox introduces Ed to the audience in Orlando, Florida.
We're very proud to have with us today someone who lives the good life he teaches. He had made his first million by the time he was 26, and he was elected to Congress at the age of 28. He's the only person in this century to have been elected to the U.S. Congress from 2 different states. He's enjoyed a close working relationship with 5 U.S. presidents and served as a presidential appointee in 2 national administrations. His name is Ed Foreman. He was born on a farm in New Mexico and has a civil engineering degree from New Mexico State University. He's an active civic leader who has built a financially successful business career in construction, transportation, and petroleum development. He's been a leader in executive development programs since 1960 and was recently featured positively on 60 Minutes. Ed is rated as America's #1 speaker in the art of successful daily living, and we're glad to have him with us here today. Please give a big welcome to Ed Foreman.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Boy, what a terrific group here today. That's the second best introduction I ever had. I had to introduce myself during a political campaign out in West Texas. And I laid it on a little bit thicker, but you know it is an exciting, enjoyable pleasure to be here with you this morning. And I know some of you are a little bit apprehensive right now. You're thinking, if this guy's been elected to the United States Congress from 2 different states, been involved in all these different political activities and so forth, I'll bet we're going to be exposed to a bunch of politics here today, aren't we? No, actually, I've gone straight, and I work for a living now. I'm going to be sharing some ideas with you. If you'll put them to work in your life, I guarantee you, you'll feel better about yourselves. Let me ask you a question or two as we get into this morning. How many of you would like to have a good day every day? Would you raise your hands, please? All right, looks like all the way around the room. If you didn't raise your hand on that one, you didn't understand the question, right? How many of you would like to have a good day all day, every day? Would you raise your hand? Amen. All the way around the room. Now then, here comes the real ringer, and think about this one a minute before you respond. How many of you think it's possible to have a good day all day, every day? Would you raise your hands? Well, congratulations. That is by far the greatest majority, and it's the greatest response that I've had in a good many meetings. You know, in many meetings as I go across the country, less than half of the people will raise their hands on the 3rd question. They'll say, now, wait a minute, Ed, you don't realize who I have to work with. You don't realize who I'm married to. You don't realize all the challenging situations I have to face. Yeah, I'd like to have a good day every day. I'd like to have a good day all day every day, but I just don't see how it's possible to have a good day all day every day. Who decides whether you're going to have a good day or not? Isn't that interesting? Here, we're the ones that decide, yet a lot of us give that permission to someone else. We give it to a son or a daughter or a husband or a wife or a coordinator or a representative or somebody in the Atlanta office, don't we? Oh, you make me so angry. Yeah. So the interesting thing we need to recognize is that we're the one that makes the decision as to the kind of day we're going to have. If I were to ask you right now, who is the happiest, most enthusiastic person in this room today? Me. Congratulations. I'm glad to hear all those me's and I am and we are. The happiest, most positive, enthusiastic, successful person in this room today is the person that is thinking the happiest, most enthusiastic, successful thoughts. You see, the interesting thing about it is the most uptight, frustrated, troublesome person in here is the one who's thinking the most uptight, troublesome, worried thoughts. See, by our thoughts, we begin to control what happens in our lives. Now, if there were a way that you could indeed have a good day all day, every day, you would probably want to know how to do it, wouldn't you? Say yes. That's exactly what we're going to talk about this morning. And, you know, a lot of people say, you know, where'd they come up with this old boy anyhow? Let me tell you just a little bit about my background in addition to what Jim has said here. I grew up on a farm in Portales, New Mexico, and went to the oil fields of West Texas after I got out of college. And I was very successful in developing a neat little drilling technique there on how to drill wells faster and better than they had drilled them before. And in a very short period of time, I made a lot of money in a hurry. And I made so much money so fast that the Internal Revenue Service came in, and for 1 year, I furnished a secretary in an office for them to investigate me to see how anybody, as young as I was, could make so much money so fast and do it honestly. And I became concerned about the size and power and control of the federal government and decided to go to Washington and change the system. Now, that shows how much I knew about politics. But anyhow, to show you further how much I knew about politics, I ran as a Republican in West Texas. Now, we were outnumbered 20-1. But what I did, I went in and I went into lots of counties where there was not even one person that would publicly identify themselves as a Republican. I mean, it was not socially acceptable to be identified as a Republican. But what I did, I got the Garden Club, I got the Rotary Club, I got the JC, somebody to support me. In fact, in 4 counties, I did not even have one person to represent me as a Republican. I couldn't even be on the ballot. And it's hard to win an election when your name's not on the ballot, you know. But what happened, I became the first Republican in history to be elected to the United States Congress from West Texas. One of the old-timers out there here a while back said, yeah, and by God, the last. But be that as it may, what happened, I went to Washington in 1962, and it was an exciting, enjoyable experience, and it was really good. But in 1964 was a bad day at Black Rock for Republicans everywhere. My good friend, the senior senator from Arizona, Barry Goldwater, was running for president, and goodness knows he and I both needed an awful lot more help than we realized at the time. We were about 25 years ahead of our time, you know, and so it was fascinating. Come the election of 64, I went down to defeat. And instead of staying in Washington, becoming a lobbyist and so forth, I went back. I'd sold a lot of my businesses in Texas, and so I went into business in New Mexico. And I got into the ready-mix concrete and sand and gravel building, construction business, and so forth. And immediately the news media began to speculate that the reason I had moved out there was to run for office, to buy a Senate seat or to buy a congressional seat in this sparsely populated area. And frankly, it was furthermost from my mind. I was like an ex-con had gone straight. I decided I was going to get back into business and make money. But what happened, the Democrat legislature met in special session. They districted the state. We had 2 congressmen at large and 2 senators, of course. And they made Albuquerque and Santa Fe one district and all the rest of the state the other district. And when the incumbent Democrat congressman moved into my district to show this Tejano, as they call me, what they did to interlopers. Well, quite frankly, it became too much of a challenge. I was like an Avon district sales representative. I thought I may not want it, but by golly, I'll show them I can do it, you know? And so, what happened, I became a candidate for the United States Congress in New Mexico, and I became the only person in this century to be elected to the United States Congress from 2 different states. And a lot of people say, well, so what? The so what is this, is that if a farm kid from Portales, New Mexico can make $1 million by the time he's 26 years old, can be elected to the United States Congress from 2 different states by the time he's 35, anybody in this room can do anything you want to do anytime. And that's the exciting thing that I share with you about it. Now, let me tell you what happened. We had a lot of good businesses, and our people were doing good. We had a lot of enthusiastic, dynamic, vibrant people just like you, but we had some who weren't so dynamic and so vibrant. I mean, we had some that did their job well, but they just didn't seem to feel good. I mean, they were the type of person, when they got up in the morning, instead of saying, good morning, God, they said, good God, it's morning. You know the type I'm talking about. In fact, if they were in this room and they got up and walked out, they'd just raise the good feeling of everybody in this room. And so we said to our people, what is it? What is it we can do to help you feel as good as you do? What are some ideas that we might share? How is it that you're so happy? It's getting back into some of the things that Jim had talked about here a while ago. How do we inspire our representatives to be happy and enthused and turned on about life? Not just to sell our product, not just to represent our company, but to feel good about themselves, to have a wholeness, a fullness of life. And so what we did, we got all of our key leaders together, and we went up to a little place in southern New Mexico, a place called Rio Dosa, up in the mountains of southern New Mexico, an old place called the Navajo Lodge up there, and for a week we ask them to bring an idea, bring a book, bring a tape, bring a record, anything that has helped you to enjoy life as much as you enjoy. And let's share these ideas, and let's see what we can do to begin to enjoy greater fullness and vibrance and vitality of life. And so they came, and we had some of them bring the book Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. Some of them brought Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Some of them brought Earl Nightingale's old record, The Strangest Secret. Some of them just came and said, well, my mama said if I do this, my daddy said if I do this, I'd feel better, I'd get along better, and I'd enjoy more of life. We even took our company doctor up there with us, and this was in the days before it was popular to maintain a strong, healthy, dynamic, vibrant body so you'd feel good, think better, and perform better. And every morning at 6 o'clock, we'd be out on the tennis courts, and we'd be going through calisthenics. And if you weren't out there to participate in the calisthenics, we had what we call the baptism committee that would come get you out of bed, and they'd bring you down. There's a little creek run behind a hotel, and there was a pond out there, about 55-degree water, and they'd toss you in that pond. Now, the reason we called it the baptism committee is once you were tossed in that pond, it made a born-again believer out of getting up early out of you. And you got to be a member of the baptism committee, and you didn't want to get on the committee that way. But we did. We had an exciting, enjoyable sharing experience. And so when we finished up, our people said, you know, I feel better right now than I've felt in a long time. Boy, this has been a rejuvenating, battery charging experience. We ought to do this next year. And so we put it on our calendar to do the following year. Well, about 3 months before it came up, they said, you know what we ought to do? We ought to bring our husbands, our wives, our children. We ought to make it an all-encompassing family affair. If they could get as excited and feel like we do, no telling what would happen. So they came, and boy, did we have a good time. I mean, it was one of the most exciting, enjoyable sharing experiences you've ever seen. And when we finished up, what happened then was our suppliers, our people that sold us trucks and equipment and cement and so forth, and our customers said, how about us coming to your meeting next year? So what happened, instead of having one meeting the next year, we had 2, and then we went to 4, and then 6, and it began to grow and grow and grow. Until one day, about 6 years ago, as Jim told you a while ago, I was in my office in Dallas one day, and I got this call, and they said, this is CBS News, 60 Minutes. Said, we'd like to come in and do a feature on this positive attitude development training program you do. Well, I started laughing. I thought it's some friend of mine like Brian or Michael or somebody like that trying to play a trick on me, you know, and I said, who is this nut calling anyhow? They said, this is CBS News, 60 Minutes. Said, we'd like to come in and do a feature on this positive attitude development training program that you do. We've been reading about in some of the national publications. In fact, one magazine had done about an 8-page spread on it, where you have been improving your physical, mental, and emotional well-being. You're doing better. So we'd like to come in and do a feature on it. And I said, well, thank you very much. I said, we wouldn't be interested in talking to you. And I did something I very rarely do. I said, goodbye, and I hung up the phone. Well, about 10 days later, I got a call from Morley Safer. And Morley Safer said, Ed, I understand one of our people called you to invite you to be on CBS News, 60 Minutes. You told him no thank you, weren't interested, goodbye, and hung up the phone. I said, Morley, you got the message exactly right. And he said, well, why wouldn't you be interested in being on our program? I said, simply because I've never seen you do anything positive before in my life. And he said, what do you mean? I said, anybody you ever had on that program, I don't care if it was the President of the United States, I don't care if it was the Pope himself. I said, you cut them to ribbons, and we're not going to subject ourselves to that kind of international ridicule. He said, now, wait a minute. He said, did you see that show that we did on Miss Lear Jet Corporation? I said, yeah, I saw that. He said, you see the one we did on your fellow Dallasite there, Mary Kay Ash? I said, yeah, I saw that. He said, well, wouldn't you say that those were 2 fairly positive programs? I said, well, out of the 100 or more programs I've seen, yeah, you did do 2 fairly positive programs. He said, well, that's the kind of show we want to do on you. Well, I'd heard this kind of come on before, you know, and I said, well, I'll tell you what, Morley. I said, you and one of your key people, and excuse me, New York staff, whenever I say this, I said, you and one of your key people come down from New York City and go through the program, and if you can begin to develop a more wholesome, positive, outgoing attitude, I said, that ought to prove that it works, and we'll talk to you about doing it. And I'm not saying that all New Yorkers are that way, but I am saying that the interesting thing about it and what I had seen on 60 Minutes, they had indicated that. And to my surprise, he said, okay. Well, here they came down, and you ought to have seen them whenever they came in, sat down on the back row. We'd condensed our program now from a week long to 3 days a night. They come in on Thursday night, class runs Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And here they came in, and we take 60 people per class. They came in, sat down on the back row, arms folded about like you are there, you know. And it was interesting. Every once in a while, they'd punch the person next to them, listen to his hokey accent. Isn't this weird? They automatically assumed if you had a southern accent, you couldn't have any intelligence, you know. And it was interesting to watch them. But they did what they were told to do. And the second day they came in, and it's not just a lecture program, it's lecture, go out and do, put it to work. It's an experiencing, living program. It's how to laugh and love and relax and enjoy the fullness of life. And the second day they came in, and sat about halfway up in the group. I mean, they were taking notes, their pencils were smoking, they were getting with it. And the third day, I mean, we're right on the front row. Every once in a while, they're saying amen, you know, and I was getting with it. We finished up on that third day. They said, this is fascinating. We feel better than we did when we came in here. These people are acting differently than we did when we came in here. We can hardly wait to get down here and film this activity and show people what happens when you begin to develop a more wholesome, positive attitude, a more vibrant outlook toward life. And so they came in with their film crew, and for a week they filmed in one of our classes. They went out and interviewed our graduates from 16 years old to 86 years old. Yeah, 2 times a year now we do this program for junior high and high school students in helping them to develop a better communicating relationship with their parents, their teachers, to feel good about themselves. And they did a very positive 16-minute segment on CBS News, 60 Minutes, that was shown across the United States and by satellite around the world. And as a result of that program, we have had participants from 17 free world nations come and participate in this experience. I'm talking about people from all around the world. Now, a lot of people will say, well, so what? The so what is this, is that if people were not getting a significant improvement on the bottom line, they would not be investing their time, efforts, energy, and money in primarily an attitudinal or a personal improvement experience. And what I'm going to do, and I'm going to treat this just as though my own son and daughter were in this audience today, I could not be more sincere. I'm going to share with you 2 of the greatest lessons that I've learned in the last 10 years of my life in helping us to enjoy more vibrance and vitality out of life. And the basic theme that goes through what we teach is this. We teach people that life is for laughing, loving, and living. That it ain't just for whining, worrying, and working. Amen. Amen. And you know, people look at that and they'll say, well, Ed, that's right. Whenever I laugh, I feel better. We now have 7 medical doctors on our staff that tell us that laughter is one of the greatest preventative medicines that there is. They tell us that laughter is almost like stationary jogging. It just moves all the muscles and organs of your body and it helps you to feel better. Furthermore, they tell us that laughter helps you to get rid of gas. So if any of you feel a build up here this morning, just laugh out loud, you know. Try to find the appropriate spot so you don't look too conspicuous whenever you do. But here's what we found. We found that when you laugh, scientifically, you secrete natural hormones into your system known as endorphins. Endorphins are 200 times as powerful as morphine. They give you a positive orientation toward life. For instance, when you laugh, you can't be uptight and frustrated. You don't say, I'm about to get a divorce. I'm about to go bankrupt. See, you don't do that. See, the fascinating thing about it is that when you laugh, you begin to have better thoughts. Now, when you begin to have better thoughts, you begin to have better actions, you begin to perform more productively and successfully. See, laughter is one of the greatest preventative medicines there is. In fact, we had an outstanding neurosurgeon, brain doctor, if you will, by the name of Dr. Phil Williams, who came through our program not too long ago from there in Dallas. Dr. Phil Williams is a brain surgeon, works with people who have mental anxieties, frustration, worry, and so forth in their life. And he'd been through our program, and he had reviewed some of the beneficial effects of what we're talking about, laughter. And he initiated a very unique and unusual little prescription that called for 15 seconds of laughter every morning and 15 seconds of laughter every afternoon. He said, now, when these people would come in there uptight, frustrated, anxiety-ridden, I'd just write them out a little prescription, and I'd say, no matter where you are, what you're doing, you just stop mid-morning, mid-afternoon. You set a clock or a timer right up there on your desk or your dashboard or your cabinet or wherever it is, and for 15 seconds, you laugh just as loud and as hard and as forcefully as you can. Now, he said, Ed, we found that when those uptight, frustrated, anxiety-ridden people would stop and laugh for 15 seconds, they couldn't be uptight and frustrated. He said they began to think better than us, but he said more importantly than that, within a week, we saw some magnificent benefits as a result of this little prescription. Now, here's what I'm going to ask you to do this morning. I'm going to ask you to go through that prescription. In just a minute, I'm going to look at my watch, and whenever I say go, you're going to laugh just as loud and as hard and forcefully as you can. Now, I don't mean you're just going to sit there and grin or giggle. I'm talking about good old belly shaking, gas passing laughter. I mean, you're just going to let her go. Now, if there's anybody sitting there saying, well, tell me something to make me laugh. You may be in a situation sometime where there's nobody around to tell you anything to make you laugh. So here's what you do. You think of something as positive and uplifting as you possibly can. Turn the corners of your mouth up. You begin to kind of wiggle your body like you're going through the movement, you know. And the first thing you know, you begin to catch it from yourself. Now, if there's somebody sitting there next to you saying, oh, isn't this dumb? Isn't this weird? You know, give them an elbow, give them a knee, get them going. And what we're going to do, we're going to do it for 15, and then we're going to say stop. You got to stop, and then we're going to come back and diagnose the feeling that we have as a result of this little exercise. Everybody understand what we're going to do? All right, everybody ready? Go! Come on, you can do better than that. Come on, you can do better. Come on, you can do it. 5 more seconds, 5 more. Okay, stop. Woo! Isn't that a good feeling? Stop. Wow, what a good feeling that is. You feel that tingling that goes up your spine? Your heart begins to beat faster. You begin to get more oxygen and glucose to your brain. You know, it's a good thing you had dark britches on, wasn't it? I did that in a program the other day, and a lady jumped up and went running out like this, you know. Sometimes it makes things other than endorphins flow. But, you know, the interesting thing about that is that you cannot be angry, you cannot be upset whenever you're laughing. It's one of the greatest and most wonderful preventative medicines. Teach your children to laugh. Begin to laugh more at yourself, enjoy it. And let me tell you something. It'll work some amazing benefits in some of the day-to-day situations that you face. If you're ever in bumper-to-bumper, fender-to-fender traffic, and people are shouting and honking and waving at one another, you know, waving their fists at one another, instead of getting engaged in that little morning ritual, what you do is you just go, ah! They'll move aside, they'll let you right on through. See, they don't know what in the world's the matter with you. But the interesting thing about it is, you will get to your destination with a lot happier, more productive, and successful attitude. You see, laughter is one of the greatest and most wonderful, great medicines that we can take. The more we laugh, the better we feel. Life is for laughing, life is for loving. Whenever I talk about loving, I'm talking about, first of all, loving yourself. Let me tell you right now, if you don't love yourself, you'll never love anybody else. You see, the person that says, well, I'm overweight and I'm out of shape. Yeah, that's right. See, self-love is one of the most important good ingredients to feeling good about others. The person that says, well, I'm overweight and I'm out of shape and I'm not very well disciplined. You know what they say about other people? Well, she ain't no Miss America herself. Yeah, he ain't no Mr. Charles Atlas. See, what happens is when we put ourselves down, we begin to look for those same shortcomings in other people. Now, I'm not talking about that self-love that says I'm better than anyone else and no one compares to me type love. I'm talking about that love that says, baby, I'm good. But in every way, every day, I'm getting better. I learn from every person I meet. I learn from every situation I experience. And people say to me, oh, come on now, Ed, you mean to tell me you learn from losers? Well, of course I do. I find out what they do, and I don't do it. You know it? Yeah. I find out what they read, and I don't read it. But you know, a lot of people not only don't learn from others, they don't even learn from themselves. I was talking to a fellow the other day, I hadn't seen him in quite some time, and I said, well, tell me, I said, how have things been going for you over the last couple of years? He said, well, they ain't been going very good. I said, I believe if I was you, I'd stop doing that. Now, isn't that interesting? They do the things that cause them to lose, and they do it over and over and over and wonder why they're losing.
Recently, I discovered a meaningful statement on love in an early copy of Dale Carnegie's great book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's a little piece written by W. Livingston Larned, dashed off in a moment of sincere feeling. First published over 75 years ago in the People's Home Journal. It struck an echoing chord with me, as it may well do with you. And it goes like this. Listen, son, I'm saying this to you as you lie asleep, one little paw crumpled under your cheek and blonde curls stickily wet on your damp forehead. I've stolen into your room alone tonight. Just a few minutes ago, as I sat reading my paper in the library, a stifling wave of remorse swept over me. Guiltily, I've come to your bedside. These are the things that I was thinking, son. I'd been cross to you. I scolded you as you were dressing for school because you gave your face merely a dab with a towel. I took you to task for not cleaning your shoes. I called out angrily when you threw some of your things on the floor. And at breakfast, I found fault too. You spilled things, you gulped down your food, you put your elbows on the table, you spread butter too thick on your bread. And as you started off to play and I made for my train, you turned and waved a hand and called, "Goodbye, Daddy." And I frowned and said in reply, "Hold your shoulders back." And then it began all over again in the late afternoon. As I came up the road, I saw you down on your knees playing marbles. There were holes in your socks. I humiliated you before your friends by marching you ahead of me to the house. Socks are expensive, and if you had to buy them, you would be more careful. Imagine that, son, from a father. Do you remember later when I was reading in the library how you came in timidly with sort of a hurt look in your eyes? And when I glanced up over my paper, impatient at the interruption, you hesitated at the door. "What is it you want?" I snapped. You said nothing, but ran across in one tempestuous plunge and threw your arms around my neck and kissed me. And your small arms tightened with an affection that God had set blooming in your heart, and which even neglect could not wither. And then you were gone, pattering up the stairs. Well, son, it was shortly afterwards that my paper slipped from my hands, and a terrible, sickening fear came over me. What has habit been doing to me? The habit of finding fault, of reprimanding. This was my reward to you for being a boy. It was not that I did not love you. It was that I expected too much of youth. It was measuring you by the yardstick of my own years. And there was so much that was good and fine and true in your little character. That little heart of you is as big as the dawn itself over the wide hills. This was shown by your spontaneous impulse to rush in and kiss me good night. Nothing else matters tonight, son. I've come to your bedside in the darkness, and I've knelt here ashamed. It's a feeble atonement, and I know you probably wouldn't understand these things if I told them to you during your waking hours. But tomorrow I'm going to be a real daddy. I'll chum with you, and I'll suffer when you suffer. And I'll laugh when you laugh, and I'll bite my tongue when impatient words come. And I'll keep saying it as if it were a ritual. He's nothing but a boy, a little boy. I'm afraid I've visualized you as a man. Yet as I see you now, son, crumpled and weary in your cot, I see that you're still a baby. Yesterday you were in your mother's arms, your head on her shoulder. I have asked too much, too much.
You see, one of the most important things that we can learn is to feel good about ourselves, because when we feel good about ourselves, our children begin to see that in us. And when our children feel good about themselves, we're overcoming those challenges that we face in our society today. Feeling good about ourselves is one of the greatest things we can do. Life is for laughing, life is for loving, life is for living here and now today. You know, one of the most sad and tragic facts of life is the someday syndrome. It's the little boy, the little girl that says, someday when we get to be a big boy, someday when we get to be a big girl, then we're going to get married, we're going to move into that new home, and we're really going to have a good time then. Too busy going to school now, too busy doing all the things we've got to do, but someday we're really going to live. Now, when they grow up, when they get out of school, grow up, get married, what do they say? That's right, someday, when we get this place all fixed up. Yeah, and our children get here, and we get everything rolling good in our profession, then, boy, we're really going to live. I mean, we're going to have a good time then. And when that happens, what do they say? That's right. Someday, when we get this place paid off, and those kids get out of school and get on their own, then, baby, I mean, we're going to live. We're going to have a good time then. And when that happens, what do they say? That's right. Someday, when we retire, we're going to get that motor home. We're going to travel across this great country. We're going to see all those places we've been wanting to see. We're going to have a good time then. That's right. And one day, on the way to the grave, they say, my gosh, I forgot to be happy. I forgot to enjoy life while I was here. You see, one of the most sad and tragic facts of life is going all the way through planning someday to laugh, love, live, and enjoy, and never doing it here and now today. See, there's not a person in this room that has a contract that guarantees you'll be around tomorrow. There's no way you can bring back yesterday, no matter how happy and enjoyable and successful it may have been. See, the only day that you can laugh, love, live, and enjoy is here and now today. Now, if you can find an exciting, enjoyable, easy to follow little formula that will help you have a happy, productive, successful day today, and you do that 7 days in a row, what have you had? Am I moving too fast for some of y'all right over in here? You're doing good down here. You've had a good week, haven't you? I'll slow down a little bit. You do that 52 times in a row, what have you had? Good year. You notice the questions get harder as I go along here. You had a good year. Now you do that over and over and over and over and over again. You have a happy, enjoyable, successful life. But by actual survey, 6 people out of 10 have one uptight, frustrating, get out there and deal with those morons today type day. And they do it 7 days in a row, and they say, boy, that's been a rough week. They do that 52 times in a row, and they say, boy, that's been a tough year. Life is dull and boring. We find that life is dull and boring primarily to dull, boring people. Amen? Life is exciting and enjoyable and successful to exciting, enjoyable, successful people. Life is for laughing, loving, and living one day at a time, here and now, today. See, life is not for whining. Nobody likes, oh, why do we have to do that? You know that's not our responsibility. Call Atlanta and let them take care of it. If you've got somebody like that on your team, I urge you to get them transferred as rapidly as you can, and I don't mean to another unit within the organization. Get them transferred to your competitors. They'll drain the life right out of them. Whiners and complainers will kill the spirit of an organization. They'll kill the spirit of a family. They'll kill your operations out there faster than anything. They'll kill an athletic team spirit faster than anything. Life is not for whining. Life is not for worrying. Our doctors tell us that worry is one of the greatest maladies that faces mankind today. In fact, Dr. Dale Rank, that heads up our medical advisory team, has performed over 10,000 operations. And he says, Ed, there's not a week that goes by, get this, not a week that goes by that I don't hear someone being admitted to the cardiac unit that doesn't say, I just knew I was going to come down with a heart attack like my daddy did when he was 59. Or I just knew I was going to come down with bleeding ulcers like my mama did when she was 55. See, they plan for it, they work for it, and by God, they're going to have it. You know the type I'm talking about. Recognize this. All the water in the world cannot sink a ship unless it gets on the inside of it. All the worry and anxiety and frustration and jealousy in the world cannot sink a person unless it gets on the inside of your mind. So how do you keep worry and anxiety and frustration and jealousy outside your mind? You keep your mind so full of hopes and dreams and love and understanding that there's no room for it to creep in. See, keep concentrating on your goals. And you know enough about machinery to know that if you do not lubricate machinery, it sets up, it freezes up. And it's the same thing with people. If we don't lubricate our minds, if we don't put new ideas in our minds, we begin to set up in our thinking. So occasionally we've got to take that old grease gun of good reading, that old grease gun of those good motivational tapes, hook it on that zert and go squirt, 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 and pump those new ideas into that head. Now, how much do you pump in? You pump in all of it. That's right, until all the bad stuff comes out over here. And you can't lubricate it once and expect it to stay lubricated, can you? You got to lubricate it regularly. And when you begin to lubricate it regularly, you get those good ideas. You begin to feel good, and you begin to make things happen. Let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. The second greatest lesson that I have learned in the last 10 years of my life is that worry is nothing more or less than the misuse of your imagination. See, worry, simply put, worry is nothing more or less than thinking about what you don't want to happen in the future or dwelling on an undesired past event. See, worry is thinking, oh, I bet we don't make plan. Oh, I bet we can't pay off that note at the bank. Or if you're a banker, thinking, oh, I bet they can't pay off that loan I made them. Worry is thinking, oh, I bet little Johnny and Mary flunk out of school. Little moron did bad last year and probably going to mess up again this year. See, worry is vividly thinking about what you don't want to happen. And what does it do when you think about it? It begins to knot up your gut. It begins to increase the tension in your muscles, and it starts the drip, drip, drip of the acid. It starts the development of ulcers that brings about an early death and anxiety and frustration. And a lot of people say, boy, if there's anything a guy understands, he understands what worry is. Now, having told you what worry is, I'm now going to ask you to play a little game. We'll take only about 30 seconds. Everybody just close your eyes. Now just close your eyes and think about your most outstanding, number one burning desire, your number one goal in life. Maybe it's to have that home in the country, or maybe that beautiful place in the city. Maybe your number one desire or goal is to have that wonderful, communicating, loving relationship with your husband or wife or son or daughter or mother or father or associates. Maybe it's to have a strong, healthy, dynamic, vibrant body free of illness and disease, to feel good all day, every day. Whatever your number one desire is right now, with your eyes closed, vividly see yourself for the moment, enjoying the fulfillment of the realization of that dream, that desire, that goal that you have in your mind. Actually be there. Smell the smells. Hear the sounds. Feel the feelings that you will have upon the fulfillment of the realization of that goal. Isn't that a wonderful feeling that you're experiencing right now? You can all open your eyes right now. You know, if you could be up here and look out across this group, you know what you'd see? You'd see a lot of great big smiles. In fact, sometimes people laugh right out loud during that little exercise. You know what that feeling is called that you had just now whenever you were thinking about what you wanted to happen? Euphoria, happiness, pleasantness. Probably the best word, the most universally understood word to describe that feeling is that you felt happy, didn't you? Now let me ask you something. Do you do your job better whenever you're happy? Yes. Why, of course you do. Do you get along better with your husband or wife or son or daughter whenever you're happy? Yes. Well, of course. Do you feel healthier whenever you're happy? Yeah. See, all of those are easy to answer in the affirmative. When you think about what you want to happen, you immediately feel happy. When you feel happy, you perform better at what you're doing at this moment. But more importantly than that, when you think about what you want to happen, you are projecting upon the screen of your subconscious mind a vivid image of what you want to happen. And that's why the person that says, I just know we're going to make plan and go over it, you see them next year where they say, hey, we not only went over plan, but look, we set a new record. You see that person that says, I just know we're not going to make it. We didn't make it last year, we're probably not going to make it this year. You see them next year, and what do they say? We didn't make it. Can you believe my district manager said they thought I was negative? Yeah, I can understand, because you said you weren't. See, what you see is exactly what you get. The fascinating thing about it is, let me just here's a little analogy you'll never ever forget. And it nails down the second most important lesson that I've learned in my life. And some of you may be saying, well, boy, if I missed the first most important, no, I haven't gotten to that one yet. If you were watching a very bad, terrible, gory television program, I mean, it was just one of the worst scenes you'd ever seen, and you said to yourself, oh man, I shouldn't be watching this. Boy, I'm going to be having bad thoughts as a result of this. What's the best way to get that out of your mind? Those of you that said turn it off got the second best answer. Those of you that said change the channel got the best answer. You see, if you turn it off, what do you think about? You think about what you were just watching. Now remember this, the mind is never blank. If it were, how would you know? It takes a minute, doesn't it? So what you do is you change the channel to something more positive and uplifting. You watch that a little while, and then you turn it off. The same way, anytime you're knotted up with anxiety, frustration, and worry, remember this, you cannot cure worry by saying, I shouldn't worry about that. I shouldn't worry about that. Remember, you cannot not worry. What you do is you change the channel to think about your goals, your dreams, what you want to happen in life. And as you begin to think about that, you begin to feel better. When you begin to feel better, you begin to perform better. When you begin to perform better, you begin to propel yourself toward the realization of that you desire. You see, life is for laughing, loving, and living. It's not for whining and worrying. And people say, well, Ed, I thought you had to work to survive. Don't get to looking at what you do to earn a living as necessary evil. Get excited, get turned on, and I believe you are. This is probably one of the most turned on, enthusiastic, dynamic, vibrant groups I've spoken to. But you know, I'm sorry to say that you're not representative of the great majority of people out there in the real world. In a recent survey we conducted, we found that 6 people out of 10 hated to go to work every day. Isn't that a tragedy? They spend the majority of their time doing something they hate to do. I tell people, you know, if you don't like what you're doing, back away from what you're doing and take a look at it as you did the first day when you had the opportunity to do it. Try to fire yourself and get excited, get into it, get turned on about it. Now, then fire yourself into it. Now, if when you back away, you say, hey, Ed, there's just no way I can get excited about this, then for goodness sakes, do yourself, your family, and your associates a favor and quit and go do something you can get excited about. See, that's the interesting thing about it. I noticed up here on the survey, it was talking about being able to turn off the job at night. You don't turn off the job when you're in anything this exciting. It becomes a part of you. It becomes a part of your life, and your family can be a part of it. See, that's the interesting thing about it. But you can still enjoy it. See, don't make it like it's a drudgery. Oh, I got to do this. I got to do... You ain't got to do nothing. See, the fascinating thing about it is we always have a choice.
This is the end of side A. Fast forward your tape until it stops. Turn it over to listen to side B. When we go into a nice restaurant, we sit down, we ask to see the menu. Then we pick and choose what we desire to be served. If you ask the average person if he or she had chosen all of the negative things that happened to him or her, they'd say, of course not. Yet that is exactly what is done every day. Maybe not consciously, but doing it nevertheless. The theme of this tape is that life comes to you with a menu, and you do get to pick and choose. Nobody explains that better than Ed Foreman.
With everything that happens in life, we can either do it or not do it. Now then, if it is something that needs to be done, and we feel obligated to do it, then we still have a choice. We can either do it cheerfully or we can do it uptight and frustrated. Now, what's the easiest way to do it? To do it cheerfully. And so if it's got to be done, then do it cheerfully. If it doesn't have to be done and you don't want to do it, then don't do it, right? So what happens, you begin to get turned on one day at a time, laughing, loving, and living. It's not for whining, worrying. You know, I tell people I never work. And a lot of people agree with me when I say that, but, you know, let me tell you what my definition of work is. My definition of work is when you're doing something and you'd rather be doing something else. I'd rather do what I do when I do it than anything else I could be doing. So help me, I'd rather be here this morning sharing this exciting message of expanded daily living with you than anything else I could be doing. Number one, I enjoy telling it. Number two, I need it as bad as anybody in this room. And the more I tell it, the better I practice it, the better I practice it, the better I get, the more likely you're to say, hey, this old boy is good. We need to have him on for a half a day next year. Amen? All right, you hear what they're saying there, Jim? All right. So what happens is, you get better and better and better and happier one day at a time, laughing, loving, and living. It ain't for whining, worrying. And people say to me, Ed, you mean to tell me that you spend 3 days and nights on how to have one happy, enjoyable, productive, successful day? That's right. See, once you break the code to how to have one good day, you got the code to what successful living is all about. Whenever I talk about that, I'm reminded of a situation that happened in one of our classes some time ago. We had an outstanding gentleman by the name of Judge Ziegler. He's a brother to Zig Ziglar, the outstanding motivational trainer and speaker, who is a great guy. Once you've heard him, you never forget him, who's a graduate of ours back about 14 years ago. And in this class, he said, you know, Ed, whenever you talk about that good day business, he said, I'm reminded of a situation that happened to me when I was a little bitty boy. I said, well, bounce up here, Judge, and share it with us. He said, well, I'll give you a little bit of a background. He said, when I was 2 years old, he said, my father died. And my mother was left there at home on the farm with 12 children to raise. I was the youngest of those 12 children, and I'll never forget a situation that happened when I was 5 years old. Every morning about 5 o'clock, Mother would come into the room where I was asleep. She'd put her hand on my shoulder and she'd say, son, get up. We're going to have a good time today. And I'd bounce up out of that little bunk. I'd go running in there to the kitchen. I'd sit down on a little three-legged milk stool with a wooden cook stove where Mama was fixing breakfast. She'd throw a quilt around my shoulders, pour me about a half cup of coffee, about half milk. I'd sit there and sip that coffee while Mama was fixing breakfast. The other children would be out doing the chores, milking the cows, feeding the hogs, doing things that need to be done. They'd all come in, we'd have breakfast together, and they'd take on off to school. But because I was too young to go to school, I'd stay there and help Mama do the work that needed to be done there on the farm. Now, this particular time I'm thinking about, we were picking turnip greens. Now, I don't know if any of y'all ever picked turnip greens before or not. Any of y'all ever picked turnip greens before? Oh, goodness sake, yeah, I knew this was a good group. Those of you that have never picked turnip greens, that's along in the wintertime of the year when it's real cold, and we'd been down there in the field, and we picked several baskets of those turnip greens, and we brought them back up there to the house, and out there behind the house, we had this big old long wooden bench. Had 3 big old wash tubs filled with water where we'd wash those turnip greens. Well, I went out there that morning to wash those turnip greens, and there was a layer of ice about 1/4 of an inch thick frozen over the top of each one of those tubs. I got me an old axe handle. I went along there and I broke the ice on top of each tub. I get me a big old double handful of those turnip greens, and I'd dunk them down there in that first tub and wash them around, and over in that second tub, rinse them off in that third tub. But old Mississippi soil is hard to get off those turnip greens. I'd pile them over on the porch, and Mom would tie them into bundles, and we'd put them into cardboard boxes, take them down to the general store and swap them for sugar and flour and stuff we didn't raise there at home on the farm. This particular morning, I was washing those turnip greens, and I looked down there at my hands, and it just seemed like a 5-year-old's hands are just so small. And my fingers were just so cold they'd turned numb. And my arms ached and my shoulders hurt, and I was just miserably cold from the tip of my toes to the top of my head. And I turned to my mother and I said, Mama, I'm not having a good time today. And that just hurt all over. And that night, whenever I went to bed, I was still aching and cold and miserable. Next morning, 5 o'clock, just like she always did, Mama come in there, she put her hand on my shoulder, and she said, Son, get up. We're going to have a good time today. I just rolled over and I pulled that quilt over me, and I said, No, I'm not going to get up. It's going to be a bad day. Well, she just turned around, went on back in the kitchen, started fixing breakfast. The other children came in doing the chores. They had breakfast, went on to school. Mother went on out to work. About 10 o'clock, I heard her in the kitchen. I got up and came walking in. She looked at me. She said, What are you doing in here? I said, I got up to have some breakfast and help you do the work around here. She said, Oh, no. No, son. She said, Don't you remember? You made the decision this morning that it was going to be a bad day. And she said, Son, it's going to be a bad day all day long. And she took me right back in there and put me right back in that bed. Now, you'd think any mother would let her little boy up to have lunch. But bless that dear mother's disciplined heart of mine, I stayed right there in that bed right through lunch. I didn't even get to get up whenever the other children came home from school. I didn't even get to get up for supper. I mean, it was the longest, most miserable, bad day I ever spent in my young life. Next morning, 5 o'clock, just like she always did, Mama come in there, she put her hand on my shoulder, and she said, Son, get up. We're going to have a good time today. I bounced up out of that bed, and I went running in there. I sat down on that little three-legged milk stool. Mama threw that quilt around me. And right then and there, I learned a lesson I've never, ever forgotten. And that's this, that you and you alone make the decision every day as whether you're going to have a good day or whether you're going to have a bad day. You see, the greatest power is the power to choose the kind of day you're going to have. The fascinating thing that happens, ladies and gentlemen, is this, is that any time you think a thought, that thought immediately becomes an action. For instance, if you're thinking a happy, positive, enthusiastic thought, what's the immediate action therefrom? You got a smile on your face. You got a spring in your step. You got a song in your heart. See, the interesting thing about it, you can read people's thoughts better than you can read their words. Your dog can read your thoughts. You ever come in the evening and I mean you're just, so happy. It's been such a wonderful, magnificent day. You come through that gate and that dog sees you and he comes running up there. He jumps up, he's licking you in the face. He's all over you, isn't he? You ever come in the evening and you're uptight, you're frustrated? I mean, you could just pinch somebody's head off. You come through that gate and that dog sees you, and what does he do? Ducks his tail and gets out of there, doesn't he? You see, thoughts are things that manifest themselves into action. You can't fool yourself, and most of all, you can't fool others, because we have that subconscious communication that goes back and forth. You ever hear anybody say, it sure is good to see you today? And you know they're thinking, what are you doing here, Claude? See, thoughts are things that manifest themselves into action. Now, you repeat any action over and over and over 30 days in a row, what does it develop? A habit. And what happens is that those habits begin to build the character that you become. For instance, if I were to ask you to go through a list of people that you regularly, daily come in contact with, and you put a plus sign down by the positive person, you put a minus sign down by the negative person, that'd be easy for you to do, wouldn't it? You'd say, well, boy, there's a positive one, there's a positive one, there's a positive one. Whoops, boy, there's a negative one. You better not tell her anything went wrong. I mean, that sister will hit the ceiling. You got to scrape her off the walls. Now, what are you describing whenever you describe that negative person? You are describing their negative habit pattern response to life. You automatically know that if things don't go exactly the way they intended for them to go, whammo, they hit the ceiling and run down the walls, don't they? Now, how does a positive person respond? They say, well, that's all right, back to the drawing board, we'll figure out a way to make it happen. You see, what happens is the positive person has developed a positive habit pattern response to life. And how did they develop that positive habit pattern response? By the thoughts that they put into their mind. For instance, what do you read when you don't have to read? Do you read the true confessions of a forgotten lover? Or do you read something like a positive biography? For instance, do you memorize the newspaper every morning? Or do you read some scripture? See, what do you do? What do you put in? What do you listen to when you don't have to listen on the radio? Do you listen to the cheating and drinking and somebody done somebody wrong song? I'm no good without you anyhow. Or do you listen to something like, there's a bluebird on your windowsill, there's a rainbow in your sky, there are happy thoughts your heart to fill, near enough to make you. Somebody said to me the other day, you better keep your daytime job. See, what I'm saying to you is, whatever thought you put into your mind immediately begins to manifest itself into an action that develops the habits that begin to build the character that you become. Then, therefore, is it possible to become the better character than you are right now? Of course it is. See, every one of us, regardless of what your personality trait may be, whether you're sanguine, whether you're choleric, whether you're melancholy or phlegmatic, whatever it may be, you can become the better person if you but begin to develop the habit patterns of positive life performance. Now, if there were an exciting, enjoyable, easy to follow little 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 step formula that would guarantee you could have a better day next Monday than you had last Monday, a better year, a better quarter this coming quarter than you had the last quarter last year, a better year this coming year than you had last year, you'd probably want to know how to do it, wouldn't you? Say yes. All right, let me show you how to do it. Do you know that every day life comes to you something like this? And it says, hello there, Joe. Here's the menu for the day. Now, you can either have a happy, enjoyable, productive, successful day, or if you want to, Mike, it's going to be an uptight, frustrating, get out there and deal with those goofballs today type day. You get to choose the side of the menu that you're going to take. Now, if you say, well, my goodness, Ed, if I get to choose the side of the menu that I'm going to take, I believe I'll take the terrific side of the menu. Let me show you how to guarantee to have a terrific day. What you do is you get up early. And a lot of folks say, oh, no, I didn't know it was going to be that hard. You get right out of that bed just as soon as that clock sounds. And if you're one who happens to awaken to an electronic rooster, I urge you to get yourself a soft-tone chime-type clock or an all-music FM radio station that will awaken you softly and pleasantly rather than a loud cling, 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 like a shovel beating on a D-span fire alarm that brings you out of your corner fighting mad. And don't ever awaken to a snooze alarm either. Let me tell you why. You never sleep after the first alarm. You know what you do? You lay there and start the countdown. You say, oh, my Lord, no, I got to get up in 10 minutes. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, blast off, and out you come, don't you? That's right. So what you do is you set that clock for precisely the time you want to awaken. And immediately, right when it sounds, right then, you just grab yourself in the neck and jerk yourself right out of that bed. And the first thing you do is you read something inspirational. And I don't mean a newspaper. I mean you pick up something like The Power of Positive Thinking by Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. Or you pick up something like, that's right, yeah. Or you pick up something like Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, one of the greatest goal-setting books that's ever been written outside the Bible. Or you pick up something like Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. Or something like Stand Up, Speak Out, and Win by Ed Foreman, or a lot of other great books that are on the market today. And you know, a lot of people say, well, the first thing I do whenever I get up in the morning is I go running in there to the toilet. Well, fine. Take a good book in there with you and start reading it. But if you don't, you're going to be sitting in there thinking, oh, no, I got to do this. Oh, no, I got to do that. Oh, no, I got to clear this. See, first thing, have you ever noticed this? That whenever you first get up in the morning, if you hear a tune on the radio, you'll hum that tune all day long. Or if you read a headline, you'll think about that headline all day long. Let me tell you what we found. When you first awaken in the morning, you're at the alpha level of your subconscious mind, which is the maximum brain energy learning level. And whatever you put into that mind during the first 5, 10, 15 minutes begins to program you through the day. That's why it's so very important that you either read a good positive, motivational, uplifting message or listen to a positive, motivational, uplifting cassette. Something like Happy, Healthy, and Terrific. Something like See You at the Top. Something like The Psychology of Winning. Begin to put good ideas into that mind. Now, once you get the mind, once you get the automatic pilot programmed for happiness and success, then what you do is you slip on some comfortable clothes and you go out for a little walk and you watch the world begin to wake up to a new day. And a lot of people say, well, supposing it's dark. Supposing it's raining. We've never had the booger man get anybody in the dark. See, booger mans operate late at night, not early in the morning. We've never had anybody melt in the rain. If you can safely take a bath, you can safely walk in the rain. That's right. You just go out there and you walk around and you watch the world begin to wake up to a new day. And you give thanks to God for the many wonderful blessings that you have to be thankful for. Amen. Yeah. You say, thank you, Lord, for this strong, healthy, dynamic, vibrant body that I enjoy. Thank you for the eyes to see the beauty of this magnificent morning. What a beautiful morning as I went out across the little recreation island this morning and over through the village and saw the sun begin to break up over the horizon. Thank you, Lord, for the opportunity to work with a winning organization, one of the winningest organizations ever known in the history of mankind. Yeah. And you know, a lot of people say, well, Ed, come on now, you've stopped teaching and you go on to preaching. Now, have you ever noticed this? Have you ever noticed that those people who are the most thankful and grateful and appreciative seem to have more to be thankful and grateful and appreciative for? And have you ever noticed those people that are always griping and moaning and complaining seem to have more to moan and gripe and complain about? Yeah. Seems like the good Lord says, well, you're always bitching. Let's see you get over this one. Let's see you get over that one. Yeah. It just seems like they have more to gripe about, don't it? Yeah. Yeah. You know, if you had two children, and no matter what you did for one child said, oh, thank you, Mom, thank you, Dad, that's so great. I'm going to do this and this and this with it. And no matter what you did for the other child, the other one said, oh, no, what can I ever do when everybody else got one of these? Why can't I have one? Which one will you have the tendency to do the most for? The one who was grateful, thankful, and appreciative. And that's just the way life treats us. See, whether you want to be happy or not, selfishly, that's the best way to be. And so what happens is, once you do that, you get yourself programmed, you give that thanks, you walk out. One of the good things that we recommend that you do is you do at least 20 minutes of aerobic exercise every day. Now, what is I don't mean you got to run so long and hard you feel like you're going to throw up or drop over dead. All you got to do is get that heart rate up to about 60 to 80% of maximum for 20 consecutive minutes. And that means fast arm swinging, walking, or maybe a little paddleball or tennis or swimming, or even jogging or bicycling. Anything to get that heart rate up to where you're getting more oxygen and glucose to that brain. You begin to feel better. You begin to think better. I can tell you right now, district sales managers, that can be one of the greatest solution-finding times of your entire day. And it's fun as you're out there looking and experiencing the newness of the day and taking in that good, clean, oxygen-filled air. And as you do that, you're feeling so good. And once you come back in from that exercise, walk along a little bit. Tear a leaf, smell it, look at it. You know, just be grateful. And then once you come back in, you do a few stretching exercises to keep that body strong and those muscles in good tone, those joints working good. And after you do that, you have a shower, and after you shower, you have some breakfast. And a lot of people say, well, I don't eat any breakfast. Your mother told you the most important meal for you to have every day is to have a good breakfast, did you? Yeah. And I don't care if it's just a nice big bowl of whole grain cereal, or maybe a bowl of oatmeal, maybe with some fruit on it, cut up a banana, or maybe some blueberries or something, or maybe a bran muffin or some whole grain toast. Put the protein and the fiber into that body to convert to energy to help you feel good during the day. In fact, a great rule to follow for good health is to take in 25% of your caloric intake at breakfast. Take in 50% of your caloric intake at lunch, making sure you take in 75% of your caloric intake before 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then take in about 25% of your caloric intake at dinner, except when you're at wonderful conventions like this. But what you do, that's 25, 50, 25. But what do a lot of us have a tendency to do? We jump up on the run, grab a hot cup of coffee, a greasy donut, and a cigarette, don't we? Gives us a high blood sugar count for about an hour and 15 minutes, and then bam, down we go, feet up in the air, don't we? Yeah. And then we go running in there to the coffee pot, grab yourself a hot cup of coffee, put in a couple of spoons of sugar, pour that down so you get the blood sugar up, don't you? Or you grab a Coca-Cola. Do you know that a 12-ounce Coca-Cola has the equivalent of 7 spoons of sugar in it? You pour that icky, gooey syrup down into you, get that blood sugar up, and here you go, on the run. Then at lunch, you say, well, I don't have time to stop and eat. I got too many errands to run. Got to drop this off at the bank, pick this up at the post office, do this, do that. And on the way back in, you say, well, I better have something to eat. So you grab a greasy hot dog on the run, chase it with a cold Coke, and it just sets the grease up on the way into your stomach, doesn't it? Or you grab a cold bologna sandwich, chase it with a hot cup of coffee, and it melts the grease on the way into your stomach, doesn't it? And then this afternoon, you begin to have a little sinking spell. Instead of stopping and taking a mind-controlled relaxation, what do a lot of us do? We'll run grab another cup of coffee or Coca-Cola so we can get that caffeine fixed, don't we? Just begin to get to Arbuckle lumps. Yeah. Don't know why I'm so nervous. And then you get in the scene and you say, oh, hon, I'm just whipped. Pop me a cool one. And you have a mixed drink or maybe a beer, a glass of wine, or 2 or 3 or 4 more. Get about half mesmerized, you know. World is going around a little bit slower, rotating. Then you go out to dinner. Or you go in there at the supper table and sit down. You go out to dinner, you sit down and you say, oh, my favorite prime rib. With fat marbled all the way through it, you know. Big old pile of mashed potatoes and greasy gravy. Looks like a greasy gravy swimming pool, doesn't it? Big old white roll with butter all over the top of it, you know. You say, burp, boy, sure is good. Better give me a little bit more of that grease before it sets up, you know. And we ladle some more of that on there. Finally get down and you say, oh, my favorite pie a la mode. With caramel syrup and nuts all over the top of it. I don't know if I can eat it all or not. But you try, don't you? Chomp, burp, burp, chomp. Finally get down there and we get up and say, oh, boy, I really overdone that tonight. I shouldn't have eaten that dessert. We get up and you go waddling in there to the TV room. You get in there and you lean back in that easy chair and you say, hey, Max, where's those popcorn balls and peanuts? And for another 30 minutes to an hour, you're sitting in there munchy grunchy. Maybe have a cold Coke or a beer to wash it down. Particularly if you're eating popcorn or peanuts, it's good to have a carbonated beverage because that'll cause you to burp and then knock it loose, you know, and it'll slide down better that way, you know. Finally get yourself stuffed about like a pig on the spit. You get him and say, oh, man, I really had too much to eat and drink here tonight. I better have a little cognac to kind of settle my stomach. Yeah. So we'll go in there and get a double Grand Marnier. Pour that down just like putting a lid on a volcano, isn't it? Got to keep swallowing to keep them throwing up, don't we? Start in there to the bedroom, you're going, boy, I had too much to eat and drink here tonight. I shouldn't have done that. I'm going to have trouble sleeping. There you go, consciously programming your subconscious mind, you're going to have trouble sleeping. You get in that bed, and what do? You have trouble sleeping, don't you? Start burping, don't you? Start doing it, yeah. And you roll, and you have the sweats during the night. And next morning you get up and you say, boy, I feel lousy. No wonder you feel lousy. Your body's been working overtime all night trying to digest that load of garbage you got on you this morning. So, am I staring at the people kind of squirming around? That's right. So what do? You jump up, grab a hot cup of coffee, a greasy donut, and a cigarette on the run, and you start the cycle all over again because you've developed the habit of it. See, what I'm talking about is, ladies and gentlemen, I know what I'm talking about. Do you know that a little bit over 10 years ago, I weighed 238 pounds. I had a 40-inch waistline. I mean, to go up 3 flights of stairs, I thought the big one was coming on. I started on this simple little program of 3 meals in moderation each day, getting rid of the salt shaker and the sugar bowl. Our doctors tell us that's 2 of the greatest poisons on the tables of America today. I'm not saying you got to go on a salt-free or sugar-free diet. I'm just saying take the salt shaker and the sugar bowl off the table. It'll only take you about 5 days to adjust your taste. Begin to opt for more baked or broiled chicken or fish, opting away from so much fat marbled beef or pork. Begin to eat more raw or steamed vegetables, getting more fiber into that diet. Drink 6 to 8 glasses of water per day. And today, I weigh 172 pounds, 32-inch waistline, and I never felt better. Fasten, thank you very much. But you know, the interesting thing about it is that many of us take better care of our pets. We take better care of our pets than we take care of ourselves. See, if you had a cute little puppy dog, you wouldn't think of taking him a great big bowl of grease and a cup of bourbon and say, here, honey, eat your grease and drink your bourbon so you feel good and jump around. Be happy. But we dissipate our bodies, and we wonder why we don't feel better. Now, I didn't mean to get off on a tangent on that. We're still over here on the terrific side of the menu. You have that good breakfast. Take a leisurely drive to that first call of the office where you're going to put a smile on your face. They say, hey, that Mary feels good today. Hey, that Betty feels good today. And when you feel good, everybody around you feels good, don't they? And then in comes that storehead and said, I thought we was going to get those products shipped. We're going to get this done just like a big old hot air balloon. You said, now, wait a minute. When'd you call in about that? Who'd you talk to? Where'd you want it sent? See, you go through the 6 honest serving men of clear communications. When, where, who, what, how, and why. The greatest leader, the greatest salesperson there is, learns that the best way to diffuse a situation is to ask questions. How do you think it ought to be handled? What would you suggest it be done? And pretty soon, all the hot air escapes, and they're just hanging there limp like that, aren't they? And they go out there and they say, hey, you know, that Rebecca isn't half bad. But who's the real winner in that situation? It's you, because you did not let that negative situation pull you down to this negative level. And then instead of work till you're about to drop over like a dead dog, you stop during the day and you take a mind-controlled relaxation. I wish I had time to share that with you today, but here's what you do. Just for 5 minutes, 15 minutes would be better. Even if you have to get in the seat of your parked automobile, but find some quiet place that for just a few minutes you can relax from the tip of your toes to the top of your head, let go of anxiety and frustration, and relax all the muscles and organs of your body. Slow down your heart rate. Lower your blood pressure. Capture in your mind a vivid image of your goals as you desire them to be. And this evening you take a leisurely drive home, and whenever you get in, your sweetheart says to you, honey, what kind of a day did you have today? And you say, sweetheart, I had a terrific day, because you deliberately chose that side of the menu and you made it happen. Now, there is not a person in this room today that would deliberately want to have the terrible side of the menu. But let me quickly show you how 6 people out of 10 guarantee the bad side of the menu. What you do is you get up late. You know, when the clock's there, you say, oh, Lord, no, is it time to get up already? But don't get up. Just lay there and think about everything that went wrong yesterday. Think about all the miserable things you got to do tomorrow, but don't get up. Just lay there and wallow in your misery until the snooze alarm goes down. When it goes off, what you do is you throw those covers back and you come out of that bed like a missile out of a silo. You hit the clock and you knock it off the table. You go running in there to the toilet and you stump your toe on the way into the toilet, you know. And guys, there you are in there shaving just fast again. You nick yourself shaving, pull a piece of toilet paper on there to keep them bleeding to death. And then you nick yourself again, pull a piece of toilet paper on there. First thing you know, your face looks like a cotton patch, a little piece of toilet paper stuck all over it. Or girls, you're curling your hair and the curling iron drops down and just brands you right across the forehead there, you know. And here you are in a hurry. You don't have time to read anything inspirational. But on the way in the kitchen, what do? You scoop up the morning newspaper so you can memorize the front page. Read about all the murders, wars, and rapes that happened the night before. Oh, did you see where they had a big crash? Oh, did you see where they had a big fire? So you get all that bad news working in your head. You go running in there to the kitchen and your sweetheart's poured you a boiling hot cup of coffee. And you go drink that and you go, ah! What are you doing, trying to scald me? You know to saucer and blow this stuff. I'm in a hurry. And you get into a good argument with him or her while you're pouring that hot acid down in that empty stomach. And then what do some people do? Oh, they'll reach over and light up a cigarette. And they start sucking that smoke down into their empty lungs, so they go, you know, get that film right off the bottom. In fact, I don't know why smokers don't just run out there in the driveway and squat down behind their automobile and just hook their lips right over the tailpipe and just start sucking that exhaust right into it. And people say, oh, but I smoke to relax. Oh, that'll relax you. It's just a little bit faster than wadding up a bunch of dead leaves in a little piece of paper, rolling it up, spitting on it, setting one end on fire, and sucking the carbon monoxide in that way. That's called slow motion suicide. In fact, if you had a teenager in your family and they went out in the yard and raked up all the leaves into a big pile, put a tarp over them, set them on fire, and got up on top of the pile and went, you'd say, that kid ain't playing with a full deck, wouldn't you? But what we'll do is we'll fill our stomachs full of hot acid. We'll fill our lungs full of hot tar and smoke. We'll fill our mind full of bad news, look at our watches and say, yep, 15 minutes late, just like always. You go running out there, jumping that car and screech! Look out, world, here he comes. Like a 5,000-pound semi-guided missile headed down that highway. You get down there at that first traffic light, Sonny, and there's that dodo sitting through a green light. You sit down on that horn, you say, move on, stupid! He says, shut up, fat mouth! And he catches you right there in a red light, doesn't he? But here's something you learn to do. If you'll sit there and race your engine, it'll make a light change faster. Yeah. In fact, if you'll double up your fist, waving and mumble obscenities, make a light change even faster, won't it? I mean, get a picture going, and sure enough, you change that light. You go screeching out, burn rubber all the way to the next light. Go through about 3 of those. Finally get out of the office, and you go in there, and they say, good morning, Miss Holcomb, and you go, ah! They say, look out for her. She's like a bad breath tigress this morning. And that feeling goes throughout the entire organization. And then in comes that sorehead and said, I thought you said you're going to get those hold orders shipped, you're going to get this thing rolling, you're going to get this, and you're like a big old hot air balloon. You say, wait just one doggone minute, sister. Let me tell you a thing or 2 or 3. That's like reaching up there, grabbing their balloon and going, pow, Oh, and hot air and spit goes all over everybody. They go out there telling everybody what no good rascal you are. You work. You're about to fall over like a dead dog with your feet sticking up in the air. And finally, about 7 o'clock this evening, there you are, completely covered up with all those stinking, squeaking monkeys everybody's been unloading on you all day long. And what do? Oh, you do what any responsible district sales manager would do. You get out your monkey cage, commonly referred to as a briefcase. So you unload all those stinking, squeaking monkeys and take them home, tell your family how overworked and underpaid you are. They just don't realize what we have to go through today. All the trials and tribulations and stuff we had to put up with. Back not too long ago, a fellow said he got into the habit of taking all his trials and tribulations home with him and unloading them on his family at home at the dinner table at night. And he said his little 6-year-old daughter was talking to her mother, and she said, "Mommy, why is it that Daddy doesn't have time to visit with me and talk to me after supper like he used to?" And she said, "Well, sweetheart," said, "you know, your father just recently got a promotion, and he's got so much to do during the day, he can't get it all done, and he's got to bring it home and worry and work with it here after supper at night." And the little 6-year-old first grader said, "Mommy, why don't they put him in a slower group?" Now, if you're getting into the habit of taking all your trials and tribulations and none of the fun and excitement home with you, you might take a lesson from that. But what we have a tendency to do, we run out there, throw them in the back seat of the car, get out to the first traffic light, and there's that same dodo you followed to work this morning. You go through about 3 lights, you get in this evening, and your sweetheart says to you, "Honey, what kind of a day did you have today?" And you tell them, and it gets worse from there on. Now, given that kind of a choice, which side of the menu would you take? Sure. If I went around here this morning and I asked each one of you to stand and publicly identify the side of the menu that you'd take, chances are every single one of you in here would say, "Well, of course, Ed, I'd take the terrific side of the menu." Any intelligent person would. But do you know that better than half of the people out there in the real world, full well knowing that if they get up late, grab a hot cup of coffee, a greasy donut, and a cigarette for breakfast, memorize the newspaper, and take off angry, they're going to have a terrible day. They do it day after day after day after day because they've developed the habit of doing it. You know the type I'm talking about. They say, "I don't get ulcers. I give them mothers." You know the type, don't you? Now, if there were a way that every person that you'd meet could help you be reminded of that little daily menu and therefore choose and have a terrific day every day, you would probably want to know how to do it, wouldn't you? Say it. All right, people come up to you and they say to you, "Good morning, how are you?" And what's the normal sidewalk response to that common everyday question? That's right. "Fine, how are ye?" Just like we got 2 recordings in it, don't we? "Good morning, how are ye?" "Fine, how are ye?" I mean, you see 2 people walking down the street and one of them says, "My favorite little doggy died last night," and the other says, "Fine, how are ye?" See, they don't pay a bit of attention in the world. Now, I'm not talking about that 50% below. You say to them, "Good morning, how are you?" and they say, "Woo, man, I got one of those old cheap whiskey headaches this morning. Had too much of that Moe last night." Or, "Oh, my rupture's poking out. Let me show you how bad it is here, you know." Really threw you one there, didn't I? He said, "Man, don't be showing it to me." He said, "I'm no doctor. I'm a salesperson." I'm not talking about that 50% and below that start unloading about how bad it is. I'm talking about that 50% above that say, "Fine, how are you?" From now on, anytime, anywhere, anybody says to you, "Good morning, how are you?" or "Good afternoon, how are you?" you're just going to automatically see that they're holding this menu right up on their forehead, just like this, and they're saying, "Good morning, which side of the menu will you take today?" And you're going to see this menu right on their forehead, and you're going to answer with one single word. And the word is terrific. Terrific. And a lot of people say to me, "Oh, come on now, Ed, you mean to tell me that little old cheerleading cliche is going to help me have a good day?" That's precisely what I mean. And let me quickly give you the psychology behind it. You see, your conscious mind is like the captain on the bridge of a ship. The captain looks out across the horizon and he says, "All clear, full steam ahead." And the men down in the engine room sock the power to it and it's full steam ahead. They never do say, "I wonder if the captain's got a hangover. Maybe it ought to be about 30 degrees left and about half steam." They automatically implement the orders that are called to it from the bridge. And so does your subconscious automatically implement the orders that you consciously give it whenever you first get up in the morning. If you get up in the morning, you say, "Aha, look at that magnificent daybreak. Smell the freshness of that morning air." It just begins to program you for that kind of a day. If you get up in the morning, you say, "What? Man, what a taste I got in my mouth. I need to find something to bite to change my taste, you know." And so And you say stump toe on the way to the toilet, nick self-shaving, but, burn self with the coffee. You just start praying. People say to me, oh, come on now, Ed, you mean to tell me that you feel terrific every single day? Why, of course not. But I always tell myself I do. You see, it's the as-if principle. You practice as if you are happy. See, act the way you want to become. Act confident. Act successful. Dress successfully. Look happy, and you begin to become that way. A fellow said to me the other day, he said, now, wait a minute, Ed, supposing you didn't get into the airport until after midnight last night. You couldn't find a rental car. You couldn't find a taxi. You finally hitchhiked over here to the hotel. You got over here at 2 o'clock in the morning. And this morning at 6 o'clock, Joe Holcomb called you and said to you, good morning, Ed. How are you? You mean to tell me honestly and sincerely you would respond with the word terrific? I said, I mean, if you have to put your fingers on your lips, you do it. You say, terrific. First time you may have to say terrific. But the second time you can say terrific. And the next time, and the more you say it, the more you begin to feel it, the more you begin to feel it, the more you begin to become that way. Fascinating thing happened here a while back. There's a young fellow who's a purchasing agent for one of the major companies that we work with. And he said, you know, Ed, I'd give anything in the world if I could feel as enthusiastically, dynamically, vibrantly alive as you seem to feel every day. I said, I'll tell you what you do, Bill. I said, you take this little daily menu for laughing, loving, and living your way of the good life. It's got the little happy face in it. It's got the little sad face in it. It's got the highlights of the key things that I've talked about here today. I said, you read this before you go to bed tonight. Tomorrow morning, very first thing, whenever you get up, you read it. And I'll guarantee you, if you'll do it for the next 30 days, you will develop the habit of having a terrific day every day. He said, Ed, if that's what it takes, that's what it'll do. Now, I didn't see him, I guess, for about 3 months. Saw him one morning, he had a smile on his face from ear to ear. I mean, looked like a wave on a slop bucket, you know. I said, well, tell me what happened. I said, let me tell you, Ed. He said, for 45 days, I followed that little daily menu to a T. I listened to your tapes. I read your book. I did everything you said. Every time somebody said to me, good morning, how are you? Good afternoon, how are you? Regardless of how I felt, I responded with the word terrific. But he said, on the 45th night, evidently something happened on my watch, and he said, the next morning I didn't awaken until 8:30. Jumped out of bed, stumped my toe on the way to the toilet, nicked myself shaving, almost exactly like you explained on the terrible side of the menu. In fact, he said I had to change shirts 3 times because I bled down and ruined the collar on my shirt. Said I went running into the kitchen, and bless my dear little wife's heart, she had poured me a boiling hot cup of coffee in a tin cup so I could take it with me. And he said I went to drink it, and it just stuck to my bottom lip. And he said I went running out, jumped in the car, got out at the first traffic light, and there was that dodo sitting through a green light. Well, I went to change hands with the coffee to honk and holler at him, and spilled that coffee right down my fly. And he said it's just as hot as it was when it peeled the skin off my lip. He said I finally got to the office, I went running in there, and the telephone was ringing off of the desk. I ran over and picked it up as our chief engineer, and he said, good morning, Bill, how are you? And I said, terrific! And he said, well, you sure don't sound terrific. He said, well, I am terrific. And he said, I started laughing. Because he said, right there at 10:15 in the morning, a day that would have been one of the most gosh-awful, terrible days I ever had, I turned it around into being a happy, enjoyable, terrific day because I had developed the habit of doing it. And that's precisely and exactly what I'm talking to you about, ladies and gentlemen. See, as simple as it may sound, life is basically simple. That's the single greatest lesson I've learned in the last 10 years of my life, is that every day you have the choice of whether it's going to be a good day or a bad day. And you've got to make that choice. See, not to make the choice is to choose for the bad side. So when you make the choice, I can guarantee you, wouldn't it be great to be in a family, to be in an organization, to be in a community where everybody there felt like the terrific side of the menu? Wouldn't that be wonderful? What's the best way? What's the best way to get others around you to follow that? Is to practice it yourself. See, to set the example. In fact, it was interesting. A lady was sharing with me the other day. She and her husband had been through our 3-day Successful Life course program. And they'd been practicing it. And she said the other morning at breakfast, she said her little 6-year-old daughter came in and sat down in her lap, and she said, Mommy, how long are you and Daddy going to keep going to that happy school? See, that's what I urge you to do, is to set the example. To begin to listen to good, positive, motivational, uplifting cassette tapes. And I know you do that. I know you read those books, but the greatest thing you can do for those representatives, you see, is if you concentrate on helping them to be happy and full of life and vibrance and vitality, just as you have learned yourself. Success comes as a side benefit. See, the interesting thing about it, people want to attract themselves unto them. so that you don't have to recruit near as hard. You don't have to sell near as diligently. Because when you feel good, people want to get around you to feel better themselves. And so what happens, you begin to, I urge you to get yourself programmed to go through our 3-day program. If you don't have the time or the money to invest in that now, then I urge you to get the book or the tape or the materials. I'm here to sell you on a philosophy of positive, successful living. That I find that the happier you get, the easier it is to be successful. The harder you work at success, sometimes the harder it seems to find. So what happens is, as you begin to get happy and you begin to feel good and you begin to live the good life becomes yours. Now, I know I've talked too long now, but I'm going to end this session with a little test. It's a one-question test that requires a one-word answer. If you get it right, we're going to move on to the next order of business. If you don't get it right, we're going to stay right here in this same room and we're going to practice on it till you all get it down, because nobody ever flunks one of Ed Foreman's classes. Everybody understand what the rules are. All right, here's the test question. Good morning, group. How are ya? Hey, that is without a doubt the best first-time response we ever had. Now then, I noticed there's about 3 or 4 of you. Wait just a minute. Y'all are wondering. I noticed there's about 3 or 4 of you. Looks like you may need to use your fingers. If you do, go ahead. We're all among friends. And this time, I mean, really let it come away. Let them hear us clear down the hall. All right, everybody ready? Good morning, group. How are ya? Hey, that's even all right. Now, this time, you're going to play like those chairs are spring-loaded. You're going to come right up out of those chairs. You're going to just try to sock your fist right through the ceiling. You're going to shout just as loud and as strong as powerful you can. And if there's anybody sitting there saying, he thinks I'm going to do that, he's crazy, then you got another thought coming, because this ain't show and tell. We're going to stay right here in this room, and we're going to practice on it until you all get it down. All right, everybody ready? Legs uncrossed, ready to spring? All right. Good morning, group. How are ya? Terrific. All right. Woo! You go out of here dedicated to that kind of spirit. You're not only going to have a good day, you're going to have a good year, you're going to have a good life. Thank you, and God bless you. Woo! Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. What a group.
Great. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you. What a group. Thank you. Thank you.
This is the end of Side B.